This is the story of how Hollywood's highest paid black action star, a man who once commanded $13 million per film, lost nearly everything after falling under the influence of a convicted tax scam artist. Wesley Snipes earned nearly $38 million between 1999 and 2004 while filing zero federal tax returns, and his civil tax debt eventually ballooned to $23.5 million. Three misdemeanor counts brought him the maximum sentence of 3 years in federal prison. What follows is a cautionary tale about tax protest movements, a study in how bad advice can destroy a career, and a remarkably American narrative of downfall and redemption. From Orlando to Marvel's first superhero. Wesley Trent Snipes entered the world on July 31, 1962, in Orlando, Florida, and his rise through Hollywood came fast and cut across every genre. Wildcats in 1986 paid him roughly $30,000 for his film debut. And that's when Michael Jackson's Bad music video caught Spike Lee's attention. Major League in 1989 put him on the radar, but New Jack City in 1991 turned him into a star, with his portrayal of drug lord Nino Brown helping that film gross $47.6 million against an $8 million budget. The Washington Post called him the most celebrated new actor of the season. Range set Snipes apart from his peers. Drama came through Jungle Fever and Mo Better Blues alongside Denzel Washington, while comedy arrived with White Men Can't Jump, which pulled in $90.7 million worldwide. Pure action followed with Demolition Man earning $159 million at the global box office. The Venice Film Festival awarded him the Volpe Cup for Best Actor in 1997 for One Night Stand, and by that point his asking price had climbed to $10 million per picture. Blade changed everything. That 1998 Marvel adaptation predated X-Men by 2 years and effectively launched the modern superhero film era. $45 million went into making it, and $131.2 million came back worldwide. 3 films and $415 million in combined global box office followed. Snipes collected an estimated $8 million for the first installment, with that figure climbing to $13 million for Blade, Trinity in 2004, and producer credits on the sequels added to his stake. Cumulative worldwide gross from his films topped $3.6 billion at his peak, putting him among the most bankable actors in Hollywood. And here's what matters most. Those peak earning years from 1998 through 2004 became the exact foundation of his criminal prosecution. The con man who changed everything. A man named Eddie Ray Kahn entered Snipes' orbit around 2000. Kahn had worked as a Texas police officer before becoming a convicted tax evader who served federal prison time from 1985 to 1987 for willful failure to file returns. 2 organizations operated under Kahn's control. American Rights Litigators, founded in 1996 in Mount Plymouth, Florida, and its successor, Guiding Light of God Ministries, which took over from Mount Dora, Florida, in August 2003. Religious branding disguised both as non-profits, but they ran as for-profit operations. Prosecutors would later brand American Rights Litigators as the Walmart of tax fraud. The grift worked simply. Members paid $300 to $500 in fees, and the organization filed power of attorney forms with the IRS on their behalf. A de-licensed CPA named Douglas P. Rosile, who had lost his credentials in both Ohio and Florida, prepared fraudulent tax returns. Any refund meant the organization collected 20%, splitting proceeds with Rosile. All 50 states had members, more than 4,800 paying customers total, and government records revealed clients collectively intended to cheat the United States out of $1.1 billion in federal taxes. Kahn traveled the country holding seminars with titles like Having Fun with the Taxman, and sold worthless bills of exchange for as little as $25 each, fake documents drawn on the U.S. Treasury. The legal theory at the center twisted Internal Revenue Code Section 861 into the 861 argument, claiming domestic income earned by US citizens somehow escaped taxation. Every court has rejected this as nonsense, and the IRS classifies it as a frivolous position carrying a $5,000 penalty per filing. Snipes didn't accept this advice passively. Court testimony revealed he became a true believer who invited employees of his production company to 861 seminars at his home. When accounts payable employee Carmen Baker questioned the theory, Snipes ordered her out of his house. June 2000 marked when his companies stopped deducting payroll and income taxes entirely. His legitimate tax advisors warned him the positions ran contrary to the law and terminated him as a client. None of that stopped him. 6 years and 0 tax returns. Criminal prosecution grew from actions that unfolded in careful sequence. April 19, 2000 brought an altered Form 1040X to the IRS for tax year 1996. An amended return requesting a refund of over $4 million in taxes Snipes had previously and legitimately paid. The IRS designated the filing as frivolous, and Snipes responded through his representative by threatening the IRS employee with disciplinary action while demanding the refund with interest. Another fraudulent amended return for 1997 followed in April 2001, this one demanding over $7 million back, and that's when the IRS criminal investigation began. Combined fraudulent refund claims exceeded $11.3 million. 4 fraudulent, non-negotiable bills of exchange went to the US Department of Treasury from Snipes, totaling approximately $14 million in fictitious financial instruments. Filing statements replaced actual tax returns for 1999 through 2004, and his correspondence pushed increasingly bizarre arguments. Claims that he was a non-resident alien, despite Orlando being his birthplace, assertions that he was a fiduciary of God, a non-taxpayer, a foreign diplomat, and a stateless person. One letter declared that the government may not lawfully enforce any provision of the Internal Revenue Code against me. $37.9 million flowed into Snipes during those 6 years of non-filing from 1999 through 2004. Government calculations put the tax loss for all 6 years at over $15.6 million, while the broader intended tax loss that factored in fraudulent refund claims and all related conduct reached more than $41 million. Tax year 1998 marked his last valid return. IRS Special Agent Cameron Lally informed Snipes directly in May 2002 that he was under criminal investigation and read him his non-custodial rights, including the right to remain silent. "Very interesting," Snipes replied. Hollywood's biggest tax trial. October 12, 2006, brought an 8-count indictment from a federal grand jury in the Middle District of Florida against Wesley Snipes, Eddie Ray Kahn, and Douglas P. Roziel. Maximum combined exposure reached 16 years in prison. Conspiracy to defraud the United States formed Count 1, a felony carrying up to 5 years. Filing a false claim for a tax refund formed Count 2, another felony carrying up to 5 years. Counts 3 through 8 covered 6 instances of willful failure to file federal income tax returns for 1999 through 2004, all misdemeanors carrying up to 1 year each. Snipes responded to his indictment on December 4, 2006, by formally declaring himself a non-resident alien, and that letter became Exhibit 106 at trial. Kahn fled to Panama with his wife after the indictment, but the Panamanian government expelled him and he returned to US custody on November 1, 2006. Trial proceedings saw him refuse legal counsel, refuse to attend court, file motions demanding release because the indictment listed his name in all capital letters, and accuse federal prosecutors of taking bribes. January 14, 2008, opened the trial in the Golden Column Memorial Federal Building in Ocala, Florida, with senior U.S. District Judge William Terrell Hodges presiding. The New York Times called it the most significant tax trial in 2 decades since Leona Helmsley's 1989 conviction, and television satellite trucks filled the parking lot. Kookie is not a criminal, summarized the defense strategy. Snipes' attorneys admitted his anti-tax arguments were crazy, but insisted they carried no criminal intent, portraying their client as a well-intentioned victim of predatory advisors. Prosecution rested on January 25th, and the defense rested 3 days later without calling a single witness. The jury selection controversy cut deep. Defense motions argued the government deliberately chose the most racially discriminatory venue available and labelled Ocala a hotbed of Klan activity. University of North Florida survey data showed 63.2% of Ocala respondents viewing the Confederate flag as a sign of pride rather than prejudice. The motion failed, and all 12 seated jurors were white. 3 full days of deliberation ended on February 1st, 2008. Acquitted on both felony counts, conspiracy and false claim. Convicted on 3 misdemeanor counts for failure to file in 1999, 2000, and 2001. Acquitted on the remaining 3 misdemeanor counts. Kahn and Rosile both fell on the felony charges. "It does feel good, it feels great," Snipes told reporters outside the courthouse. "My mama would be very happy. No fraud, baby." The maximum sentence. April 24, 2008 brought sentencing, and hours before the hearing, Snipes offered 3 checks totaling $5 million in unpaid taxes. Prosecutors initially declined, but the US Treasury ultimately accepted the payment. Prosecutor Scotland Morris dismissed it as essentially a down payment, but a fraction of what he owes, while the government's sentencing memo argued that granting leniency for the payment would reinforce the perception that wealthy and famous defendants can buy their way out of a prison sentence. 39 pages of testimonials arrived from what the defense called a Hollywood who's who. Denzel Washington compared Snipes to a mighty oak and quoted Psalm 1:3. Woody Harrelson called him a true citizen of the world. TV's Judge Joe Brown and Judge Greg Mathis wrote in support as well. One witness described how Snipes trained personnel from 33 airlines on safety techniques after 9/11 without seeking pay or media attention. Snipes read a prepared statement calling his actions costly mistakes and describing himself as an idealistic, naive, passionate, truth-seeking, spiritually motivated artist, unschooled in the science of law and finance. Wolves and jackals attracted by his wealth, he said, descended on him like flies are attracted to meat, leaving him well-intended but miseducated. The word taxes never appeared in his statement. Judge Hodges remained unmoved, describing Snipes as exhibiting a history of contempt over a period of time for US tax laws. "In my mind, these are serious crimes, albeit misdemeanors," he stated, and on deterrence, he spoke directly. One of the main purposes which drives selective prosecution in tax cases is deterrence. In some instances, that means those of celebrity stand greater risk of prosecution. But there's nothing unusual about it, nor is there anything unlawful about it. It's the way the system works. 3 years in federal prison came down, 1 year per count running consecutively the statutory maximum. Kahn received 10 years while Rosile received 4 years and 6 months. "Wow," Snipes told the crowd as he exited the courtroom, showing little other reaction. Assistant Attorney General Nathan Hochman declared that Snipes' long prison sentence should send a loud and crystal clear message to all tax defiers. And days later, the DOJ launched the National Tax Defier Initiative, directly inspired by the case. Appeals and prison. Bond kept Snipes free while appeals wound through the courts. July 16, 2010 brought an affirmation of his conviction and sentence from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the US Supreme Court denied certiorari on June 6, 2011. A separate appeal based on juror misconduct that cited emails suggesting predetermined guilt also failed. CNN's Larry King Live hosted Snipes on December 7, 2010, 2 days before his surrender date. "We still have prayers out there," he said. "We still believe in miracles, so don't send me up the river yet." December 9, 2010, brought him to McKean Federal Correctional Institution in Lewis Run, Pennsylvania, where he became federal inmate number 43355-018. Assignment to a minimum security satellite prison camp followed, a dormitory-style facility with no perimeter fencing housing approximately 290 non-violent inmates, mostly white-collar offenders. 28 months later, on April 2, 2013, release came with home confinement through the New York Community Corrections Office. July 19, 2013, ended his supervised release entirely. The $23 million figure at the center of this story represents cumulative civil tax debt, unpaid taxes, plus accrued interest and penalties that had grown to approximately $23.5 million by 2018. An offer in compromise went to the IRS after his release, approximately $842,000, roughly 4 cents on the dollar. The IRS rejected it. Reports indicated the agency would accept around $9.5 million, but Snipes held firm on his lower offer. A tax court judge ruled his claim of financial hardship lacked credibility, and the civil tax battle continued grinding through the legal system. The question of justice. Simple categories don't fit this case. The jury's split verdict, acquitting on all felonies while convicting on misdemeanors, suggests they viewed Snipes as genuinely misled on the conspiracy but willfully negligent on his filing obligations. His legitimate tax attorneys warned him and then fired him as a client, which undercuts any pure victim narrative. Evangelizing the 861 theory to employees, threatening one who questioned it, and continuing non-filing for years after direct notification of criminal investigation all point toward willfulness beyond gullibility. Racial dimensions shadowed the entire proceeding. Ocala, Florida hosted the trial despite Snipes never having lived there, and an all-white jury sat in a county where over 63% of residents viewed the Confederate flag favorably. Defense attorney Barnes alleged that people had publicly invited Snipes to come to Hog Valley and see our tall trees, a thinly veiled lynching threat. Comparisons to other wealthy individuals who resolved tax issues civilly struck many observers as damning, and Snipes addressed it himself in 2020. "This is not rocket science. It's not what you know. It's who you know." 3 years for misdemeanors sparked its own controversy. Defense arguments held that the sentence effectively overrode the felony acquittals, and legal observers noted the extraordinarily harsh outcome for a first-time offender convicted only of misdemeanors. Government attorneys countered that sentencing guidelines based on actual tax loss would have called for over 10 years without the statutory cap. Eddie Ray Kahn's trajectory provided the starkest contrast of all. His 10-year sentence in the Snipes case preceded another indictment in September 2008, filed while he sat in prison, for manufacturing over $1 billion in fictitious financial instruments. Conviction came in May 2010 and brought an additional 20 years running consecutively. Originally scheduled for release in April 2026, he walked free on January 5, 2021. The comeback. Snipes rebuilt his career methodically after prison. A 6-foot stack of prison-themed scripts arrived after his release, and he turned them all down. "They even sent me a clown," he recalled. "The clown was a serial killer, but he used to be a lawyer." The Expendables 3 in 2014 marked his return to theatrical releases alongside Sylvester Stallone. Spike Lee brought him into Chirac in 2015. Netflix's Dolomite Is My Name in 2019 paired him with Eddie Murphy and earned widespread critical acclaim. Coming to America followed in 2021, along with True Story opposite Kevin Hart. Deadpool and Wolverine in 2024 delivered the apex of his comeback, a reprisal of Blade after 20 years away that broke 2 Guinness World Records. Longest career as a live-action Marvel character at 25 years and 240 days, and longest gap between character appearances in Marvel films. The reaction when Wesley Snipes enters the movie is the most intense thing I've heard in a theatre, Ryan Reynolds observed. The troubled Blade reboot drew a playful response from Snipes himself. There's only been one Blade. Only ever gonna be one Blade. Reflection on his time away brought philosophical acceptance. I came out a clearer person, he said, clearer on my values, clearer on my purpose. Full ownership followed. I made decisions. I accept the ramifications of those decisions. No one forced me to take that person as my accountant. No one forced me to take that person as my lawyer. No one forced me to believe what they were saying. That was on me. The Wesley Snipes tax case tells a story larger than one celebrity who didn't pay his taxes. Institutional failures converged from multiple directions. A tax protest industry exploiting genuine skepticism about government authority. An IRS weakened by Congress in the late 1990s, creating a vacuum con artists filled. A legal system that tried a black man before an all-white jury in a hand-selected venue. And a sentencing regime imposing maximum penalties on misdemeanors to send a message far beyond one defendant. Duality keeps the Snipes story alive. Victim of a predatory scheme and willing participant who ignored every warning. Unfairly targeted by venue selection and genuinely culpable for years of non-filing. Sentenced harshly for misdemeanors, yet responsible for tax losses exceeding $15 million. Whether Snipes sincerely believed the 861 argument, as the jury's felony acquittals suggest, makes Tax Evasion or Bad Advice more than a documentary title. Thank you for watching.